Safety Service Director Barb Sylvester.
Present.
Law Director Justin Richard.
Present.
Assistant Law Director Edmund Mack.
Present.
City Engineer Alice Pitts.
Present.
Economic Development Director David Maley.
Present.
Parks and Rec Director Steve Pedro.
Present.
Police Chief Jason St. Noy.
Present.
Fire Chief Matthew Heck.
Present.
Is there anyone from administration I missed? Oh, I'm sorry, Lori. You always sit way back there in the back behind Dave. I'm sorry. Income Tax Budget Director Lori Carnegie-Moore.
Present.
Also let the record show that Councilman Smee and Councilwoman Harwood Smith are not in attendance this evening. Community Development.
I have nothing, Mr. Lewis, this evening.
Economic Development.
Thank you. There's one new legislation request this evening. Please prepare an ordinance to accept the donation of parcel 1003714 vacant lot from Oxford Princess LLC on Cherry Road. There's a map attached. The donation would be contingent on environmental studies done on the parcel. The parcel will then be used for economic development purposes. Can we have Mr. Maley come up and speak to this, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Maley, this is the parcel in front of the movie theater, correct?
That is correct.
Can you just please go into a little more detail on how this
Transpired.
transpired and what you think the intended use may be?
Okay.
If any.
Actually, a few months ago, Steve Peter was contacted by the former owner of the plaza, or not the plaza, but the cinema, about that specific lot. They sold the cinema, but they still have that particular lot. About donating it to the city. That lot's been, I think, for sale for quite some time. I mean, there's been a for sale sign, and the Putnams had their sign up there for quite some time. And Steve referred it to me, and I spoke to the gentleman, and they want to give it to the city. So at this point in time, it was kind of interesting because I was talking with another gentleman who was interested in the specific property to develop it, to put some little businesses on it. So actually, I'll be quite honest with you, I asked them if he wanted to contact the owner of the property, and they did speak, but they couldn't reach any type of agreement, which I couldn't figure that out myself. But so I think at this point we would proceed and have the property donated to the city, and at least talk to this individual who is interested in the property and see if we can work out some type of agreement with him to purchase the property and develop it. Or we could also look to, put it out there and see if anybody else would be interested.
Who would pay, would the city then pay for the, I would assume, phase 1 and potentially a phase 2?
Yes, but the thing is, these were done back in 2000. Actually, I think the city actually owned this property before they sold it off. And there was an environmental 1 and environmental 2 done on the property. But the law department was asking me to do a environmental 1 at the current time.
Okay, so if we were to pass this, then the city would engage an environmental consultant to do those testings.
Yes.
Assuming it's clean,
I don't
then
know.
we would proceed with
Correct.
the current property owner on a donation.
On a donation, yes.
Would the city then pay the transaction costs or something like that?
I don't know if there really is much transaction cost, like a quick claim deed, we think that it would come to the city. And then obviously if we did some sort of sale, it would go to our CSC most likely and then go through that particular process.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from members of the Economic Development Committee? Any questions from other members of council for Mr. Maley? Thank you, Dave. There is emergency language on this. I will sign this and send it to Councilman Bioland for his signature if he wishes, and if we get an upload, it'll be on the agenda for Monday, and I will move this forward. Nothing else, Mr. Close. Thank you.
Thank you. Health Welfare?
Nothing this evening. Thank you.
Parks and Rec,
Nothing.
Police and Fire,
Nothing for police and fire, Mr. Lewis.
Public Utilities.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I have one piece of old business. It was the grease trap legislation. I have passed out the proposed language changes to help satisfy some of council members' concerns. You can take a look at that. They just got rid of the high temperature provision that people were questioning, and then they combined subsections 3 and 4 under the existing facilities, because there was some confusion as to whether the and meant both, so they just put them together. The other addition was just a fee schedule or a fine schedule of $50 a day. The prior legislation just said we'll be fine, so I plan on bringing this forward. I'll do a motion to amend at the next council meeting and try to get it passed. It is up for a third read. So, any questions on this legislation? If not, that's all I have. Thank you.
Rules and Courts,
Nothing for rules and courts this evening.
Streets and Highways, nothing. All right, Finance. We'll go through a few of these things, and we do have budget discussions before we wrap it up. First thing I have here is please prepare an ordinance to appropriate and unappropriate balance in the general fund, the amount of $450 to the sponsorship program. This is needed for our Memorial Banners program. Questions? Please prepare legislation to appropriate and unappropriate balance in the general fund, $216,000 of fire salary, $120,000 of police salary. This is the EMA ARPA First Responder Retention Grant that we approved previously. We've received the funds, and now we just have to appropriate them so they can be utilized. Any questions? All right, Mr. Bailey, if you could please come up and discuss the 6 TIF requests. We have requests for TIFs related to Aldi's, 7 Brew, Consumers National Bank, Get Go, Panda Express, and Starbucks.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I think everybody is familiar with what TIFs are. I would hope. We're looking to do all 6 of these TIFs. 2 of them are on the north side, which are north side of Lincoln Way, are Harris School District. That's 7 Brew and Aldi's. The other 4 on the south side, which are within the Massillon City School District. We're looking to do what's called 1075, which is 10 years at 75%. In essence, that's for 75% of the increased value once the TIF is passed. I don't believe any of these are going to raise a huge amount of money, but it will be a little additional money. We did recently, our last ones we did were Wendy's, First North, and Star Class, but this would probably fall more along the lines of the Wendy's TIF as far as what it gets, what it'll bring in. I've got a couple different, as far as like what we would anticipate if the TIF with this 1075, if the increased value is 900,000, I got some sheets from the auditor's office, it would probably raise about $14,000 a year for Massillon and about $12,000 a year for repairs.
So I'm just looking for the Wendy's TIF. So the Wendy's TIF's been in effect about 3-4 years now,
Yes, okay.
and it's showing, we haven't touched it, it's showing about 41,000. Each one of those,
I was thinking somewhat in par with that. I mean, it's hard to say based on what the value increase would be. I know a lot of these currently, the 7 Brew, and I don't have the actual land value, what the what they have on the plan value, but I know the recent sale was over $1 million for that small piece. So I don't, how that gets put on, prior, I mean, I'm not sure how this will all play out, but it probably will be. So, and I've got estimates from the auditor. I talked to Gary to go over there, who's a commercial appraiser, as far as estimates, and those estimates are on the sheet with regards to what we think those possible market values will be for the properties once they're completed.
And just for the record, TIF essentially in this case would take 75% of the property taxes assessed and reroute it to a different account so that it can be utilized for capital improvements for the area.
Which would be, in essence, if we had those, we could use it for the street light that we're talking about for Starbucks, etc. But it's 75% of the increased value. So the value is what it is now, or whatever we passed, and then whatever the increase is.
Anyone have any questions? Mr. Gray?
When will those dollars be available?
Well, it will be available once the TIF goes into effect. Of course, everything's in a year in arrears too, so it's probably going to be a year.
Couple of years? Thank you.
Anybody else? And there's an emergency,
Yes,
just have to pass by the end of the year.
yes.
So we don't necessarily have to do it. We did the first reading if we wanted to.
That's why I tried to get it done through today. I'll give you 3 opportunities.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I got caught on the signatures real quick. The next one, please prepare legislation to make certain transfers within the 2023 appropriations from within the general fund for the year ending December 31st, 2023. We're reducing real property tax, city, state collective fees, and bank charges by a total of $15,950, putting the school district revenue sharing. This is to pay the district tax revenue sharing in a timely manner. Does anybody have any questions regarding this? We have some transfers to go over, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the budget. The first transfer we have is reducing police salary by $1,237, placing it into police clerks and police PRS. This is to cover shortages. And then we have in the health department reduced travel seminar by $599. Insurance by $875.13, supplies by $5,000, accreditation by $1,394.62, and servicing all those servicing contracts for line budget at the end of the year. Okay. Ms. Cavagini for
Good evening, Council. I will take any questions that you may have had since the last work session, but I also have Chief St. Noy and Chief Heck here tonight to discuss both the fire and the police budgets, to highlight some of those and some of the things they want to do going forward. So, does anybody have any questions?
Let me review. You can explain it, the increase in the salary for mayor admin assistant. What your explanation was there again? I know that there was a reason for it.
Yes, we were approached to do an internship in the summer for minority, and so that's the $10,000 actually that was written into there.
I knew it was a reason why it's going like that. Anybody else?
Okay, so now I will have both chiefs come up, whichever one wants to go first can. Gentlemen.
Council, good evening. Appreciate you taking the time to let us speak. The state of the police department is pretty strong. I think we're in a much better place this year, this upcoming year, than we were this time last year. For those of you that had a chance to look at the budget and kind of factor in where there have been some changes or anything that jumps off the page, there is one specific line that there will be at least a recognizable change. I wouldn't call it drastic, but it has to do with our support staff. At the police department, we currently have a jail that we are responsible for. We've always been responsible for it. And over the years, there's been an evolution in how that jail operates. It's went from a full-time 24-hour facility that holds prisoners 24 hours a day, and that warrants officers acting as corrections officers to maintain the safety and the custody of those individuals. Our court currently is a temporary holding facility. Because we have a municipal court here in this city, which is unique to this city as opposed to the cities around us, we have to provide court services and custody services to make sure that those prisoners that come from county have a place to stay while they're waiting to be seen up here in the courts. Unfortunately, that doesn't fall on the responsibility, or that responsibility does not fall directly on the courts themselves. Just like the courts are responsible for the bailiffs, we're responsible for custody of the prisoners while they're downstairs in our jail facility. We currently fulfill that obligation with 2 fully sworn peace officers. So all of the work that goes into becoming a police officer, and you guys have heard me talk about this before, training them, sending them to the academy, the investment in an officer, which it's difficult to come by quality candidates these days. It's filled by 2 peace officers. On average, over the last 6 years, our transports, which is prisoners coming over from Stark County Jail coming to our jail now, awaiting to be seen up here, has dwindled. And there's several reasons for that. Prisoners being released, the release schedule for prisoners in the Stark County Jail has changed over the years. Video arraignments. There's several different reasons I can cite. The fact of the matter is the numbers of officers that come over here, the number of prisoners that come over here that have to be, for lack of better words, babysat by officers has reduced significantly. I think that it is a bad use of our resources to have 2 officers for 8 hours a day, fully sworn officers, watching prisoners for on average between 4 to 5 hours a day. I would love to utilize corrections officers to cover that. I have made some changes over the last year that I think ease the pain of us hiring corrections officers to serve the jail and to serve the courts. One of those being, we had reduced our rank structure from having an additional captain, and we actually were able to get a sergeant in exchange for that. That in and of itself saves the city over $20,000 a year. The corrections officers that I'd like to put in place for the upcoming year are going to be part-time employees. They'll be civilian employees. They won't be subject to the same pension funds. We're looking at around 30 hours a week to make sure that we have adequate coverage of the jail while prisoners are here, which would entitle them to a benefits package, which I think is good because it will draw people to the position. But they're going to have to have the proper certifications to get into that position. So I would be more than willing to answer any questions that anyone on council may have about that. But I think that we need to continue to put officers on the street, especially when we're struggling to get officers. Officers that we have now really need to be on the street. We can use corrections officers to fill the needs at this point. So that's a long-winded way of saying that there will be an increase in our budget for a couple of additional civilian employees. They will not be fully sworn officers. They will be certified corrections officers. On top of that, the hiring that we've done over the last year is going to significantly reduce the amount of overtime. 2022 was a rough year for the city, and as far as officers overtime. I mean, we were looking at over $500,000 in overtime paid out. A lot of that had to do with our lack of staffing. On top of that, when you have lack of staffing, you see a significant increase in sick time because when officers are working several doubles a week, if they can't have a day off or they feel like they're just too exhausted and they're a liability to the community or their other officers, they'll call us sick. And that's just the reality. And we've seen a significant drop in sick time for this year. So everything budget-wise is trending in the right directions. We continue to hire. We did some interviews this morning. We continue to keep bringing people through, and we are rapidly approaching that number where we want to be. And I think that we will see a fair amount of savings, actually, comparatively speaking, to not having officers. So with that, I'll open the floor to any questions that anyone may have.
What is the state of our fleet right now?
So our fleet is actually in pretty good shape, and one of the reasons why is because we have been on a continued pattern of purchasing vehicles. Now, unfortunately, when you have very young officers who don't have a lot of time behind the wheel, they're not as experienced of drivers, just like anyone of us know. If you swing a baseball bat 10 times, you know how to swing a bat. You swing it 1,000 times, you get really good. Well, the same goes for being behind the wheel. The more time they get behind the wheel, the better the driver they'll be. And we plan to try to do some training. But we have several, I'm glad you brought that up, we have several vehicles right now that are in certain states of repair. A couple of them, no fault to the officers. But we have 2 vehicles right now, we have 3 vehicles that are possibly up to be totaled. 2 of those vehicles, not our fault. We did have an officer involved in an accident. It was at fault in the accident. Young driver in field training. I hate to say it, but it's the cost of doing business. These officers are expected to be on the road at all times, not sitting on station. They should be patrolling. And anybody who spends over 8 hours a day is far more likely to be involved in an accident. What we can do as a department is continue to give them training and make sure that our young officers have field training officers in the car that kind of make them better drivers, or at least keep an extra set of eyes on the road for them. So our fleet actually is not in terrible condition because we've been buying several cars a year. We have several cars still on our lot that are readily usable to be police cars. They're just not the newest of them.
What about other equipment in general? Is it up to par?
I think we're doing very well. Everything that we have to offer our officers right now, I would put up against anybody in the county. The legislation was just passed for us to purchase a drone. I mean, when you're purchasing drones, I think that you're doing pretty well because that means that you have money to put towards some things that aren't necessary for doing police work, but allow you to be a better police officer. The addition of the Axon body cameras, so those are all brand new for this year. They've all been implemented. Every officer that works on our department has a body-worn camera. Not all agencies in the state of Ohio can say that. And we were doing it long before a lot of even bigger agencies. New dash cams. We've transitioned to new cruisers. We just took possession of 4 of them. We have 1 en route right now that we're just waiting to take possession of. Almost our entire department has brand new body armor because they're all new. One of the first things that we do with new officers is order them new body armor, so new vests. I think we're in really good shape. Our next big purchase that I don't know if it'll come in 2024 will be probably updating some of the firearms. The firearms are coming up. The sidearms that officers carry are coming up on being a decade old. And then we're looking to maybe transition back to a simpler model of shotgun in the cars. Every police cruiser has a shotgun already in it. And I'm actually looking to go into something that is lower cost, simpler to use. So sometimes high tech isn't always the best thing. So I think we're in good shape.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you.
Good evening. Much like Chief St. Louis, I think you'll find from an operational standpoint, the fire department's going pretty well. Most of what we're looking at going forward is more capital items and more of a strategic plan or long-term planning. But from an operational standpoint, going into next year, if you guys will look through the budget and stuff, the biggest increase I think you're going to see is the salary-related items. And part of that is a 3% contractual increase that's coming, and then all the items that are related to that also go up going forward. The other thing was the healthcare, it's an increase, but even kudos to the healthcare committee and the job that they did to kind of keep that expense and that increase as minimal as possible. So that's the biggest line item increase that we're going to see across from the operational standpoint. The other things that we do from an operating budget, we've been able to keep that pretty well even keel. We do have some increases going with a couple line items that we've been able to offset that a little bit with some decreases in other line items. The simple dispatch, which we have been in contract with since 1986 and is doing very well. That's a 3% increase going again this year. That's the agreement that's going on. We did have some discussion that we were able to hold that to 3%. Originally, we were looking at about 5.3 to 5.4 because the way that the agreement was written was we look at a 3% increase as well as based on the call volume. Well, if your call volume goes up, plus the cost per call goes up, it's not so much a 3% increase. So we were able to hold the call volume in check going forward. So we're just going to realize a 3% increase as far as simple dispatch. So it's roughly about a $29,000 increase from previous year, from 2023. The other item that we see some significant increase, and that's the services and contracts. The cost of things are going up. When we're seeing that across the board. And a lot of those items are required items that we must do on a yearly basis. For example, pump testing. We're required to do pump tests on our fire engines every year. SCBA bench testing, the air packs that we wear have to do bench testing every year. This year we ended up having to send the cylinders that go down for hydrostatic testing. They go out every 5 years. So those things are required, and the cost of that stuff is going up. Other items that we're looking at, employee physicals, because we're in a respiratory protection system. We have to have physicals every year that measure respiratory function, cardiac, those types of things. That cost is going up. We just can't get around it. We've done some things to minimize that cost, but most of the things in the house, we still need the doc to stay fit for duty. And so that's what the cost of there is going up. The nice thing is in the supplies and materials line item, we've been able to decrease that over the last couple of years. We decreased it again this year. A couple reasons for that. One is our EMS supply cost is going down based on our partnership with the local hospital, joining and going in with the regional standing orders and some of the replacement programs that we have in place with the local hospitals with disposable medical supplies and stuff like that that's replaced at their cost. The other item is the reporting software. All the software, the incidents that we respond to, we have to document and put that on reporting software. The state of Ohio requires that we supply that or submit that electronically. So in order to do that, these software is out there, and we've been able to curb that cost a little bit in partnership with the hospital because they get some backside benefit as well based on some data collection and healthcare data that sees how things are moving and what kind of issues we're looking at and things of that nature from a healthcare stability across the community. So we've been able to decrease that to kind of offset the cost increase that we're seeing in supplies or services and materials. But those are the big things that we're looking at from an operational standpoint. Capital-wise, this is kind of where we've been sitting and having some discussions on where to go and what the needs are, what the wants are, and some wishes. As far as the needs are concerned, the lease payment for the 2 engines, that's in the contract. That should be expiring in 2025, I believe it is. It's the last payment there. The other stuff that we have, we're in the process of looking at what they call the BRIX Fire Station Alerting System. It's BRYX, try to spell that, but it's a fire station alerting system. And when we went to the 800 radio system back in 2018, we lost some of the capability for station alerting. We had some band-aid approaches. We now have a stopgap with a pager system, which doesn't have any redundancy, doesn't have any backups to if the pager goes down, then we lose some capabilities there. With the BRIC system, it does a couple different things. One, it increases dispatcher efficiency, units dispatch quicker. As soon as they hit recommend out of the county CAD system, it knows what units to dispatch and it automatically dispatches it. So it increases some efficiency there, which is a good thing because Jackson Township just went through their ISO rating, and one of the biggest areas they got dinged was dispatcher efficiency and the time it took to get calls out to the first responders. So that should help that aspect going forward. We're due for an ISO here in the next couple of years. On the fire department side of it, one, we get redundancy in the system. So this is a three system or three redundancy system. Primary is internet-based. If that goes down, then we fall back onto a cellular data, which is automatically in the system. And if that would happen to go down, it falls back onto a reduced functional ability, but we still have the radio waves to have that coming through. So that's a 3 or 4 year project that we've been looking at. We're pretty much ready to pull the trigger. We've been traveling around different places that have it, understanding the bugs. We've had engineers look at our facilities and make sure that the equipment that we need, the components, are what we need to make this thing functional. So that's the cost that you're going to see next year and going forward. We've been able to spread that over about a 5-year process, which in the long run is actually cheaper than paying for it all up front. As far as equipment and the fleet and apparatus, we still have a 32-year-old ladder truck, or tower truck, I should say. There's a difference between a ladder and a tower. The tower truck is still there. It's still being maintained, but the cost of that maintenance is skyrocketing. The frequency of that maintenance is skyrocketing. And the reliability of it is sinking. And I cringe sometimes when we have people in the bucket and what might happen or what may happen to the truck or whatever. We've had it stalled out on the scene one time with the bucket over top of the fire. Thank God we're able to get out, I'll have the ladder, but we need to keep working to replace that. We did file a grant application for the ladder truck or for the tower. We have not heard yes yet, but we also have not heard no. So we'll see, but I'm not holding my breath on that going forward. The cost of that has skyrocketed here in the last few years. Across the board, apparatus and ambulances, we're looking at 25 to 30% increases on a yearly basis over the last 3 or 4 years. So when I first started talking to Lori about it back in 2020, we were looking at 1.3 million. We're now looking at 1.9 to 2.1. So obviously we're looking for some other ways to fund that and move forward. But that is a need that we need to take care of. The other thing that we've done here recently over the last year and a half is we've revisited the station location analysis that was done back in 2012, just to update it and also incorporate how we increase the call volume, how our runs back to the northeast side increased back up. So we've come back and looked at different locations and how do we look at a 4-station model or do we look at a 5-station model. The issue right now with the 5-station model, we're looking at another 1.5 to 1.8 million to the operating budget side of things on a yearly basis, which right now I don't think we're anywhere close to being able to do. So we're looking at how do we make a 4-station model going forward? How do we make that work with the understanding that at some point in time we're going to have to go to a 5-station model. But we can have some time to plan that going forward. There's some things that we're looking at doing as far as moving crews around. When I say crews, the fire stations that have firefighters and paramedics located at, we may be able to move some of those to different locations. Part of that includes building a new station on the west side. And the reason being is to protect that west side a little bit better. And we're looking at what we can do to make that happen. When we start looking at time, in our world, time is our worst enemy sometimes. If somebody's got a cut finger, not that big a deal. Somebody's having chest pains, a little bit bigger deal with time. If somebody's house is on fire, a little more big of a deal with time. So one of the best ways we can do to cut that time down is relocate a station. So that's one thing we're working on, is looking at how do we best go about approaching that need on the west side. The other aspect of that is Station 1 and we've talked about renovating that. That was built back in 1970, and at the time we had one fire chief, one superintendent of buildings or fire marshal, and one captain that oversaw the shift. Since that time, we've had 3 more people to the Fire Prevention Bureau. We've had a captain of Station 1. We have taken supply closets and made them offices. We've taken file rooms and made it an office. We have taken the visitor's room and made it an office, and we're busting at the seams. And the requirements today with reporting and the administration side of things, we need more space to make it one. And that's just the way things have grown since 1970, looking at 50-some years, growth in the fire department and needs of the administrative aspect of things. One of the things that's held us back is the space and the need for an administrative assistant. We haven't had one in 50 years that I know of. And most of my week is spent on clerical stuff. So we spread that around, but we can still use an administrative assistant. I'm just looking for space right now. Other aspects we're looking for from a staff standpoint and some of the strategic planning or future planning growth is the need to take our EMS coordinator down to a 40-hour position. And the reason for that is the amount of requirements that we have from our billing, quality assurance, the state reporting, and just keeping up with the general admin administration side of the EMS transport things. In 2010, when we first started, we could handle that very well with one person who was still on shift. Now that we have all 4 stations that are transporting, and we're transporting closer to 3,700 people a year, the need to look at making that a 40-hour position is upon us. So, again, that might require some space with some different renovations at Station 1 to make that more plausible. So that's really where we are going forward. We've done some things here this year. We've done a lot of upkeep and maintenance and preventative maintenance on equipment. 3 of the 5 med units have new tires. We put new tires on the tanker. Tires are not cheap. And they're one of the things that are skyrocketing costs. But the upkeep of the fleet has been being done this year more so than we've done in the past. Hopefully we can cut that back next year a little bit. Focus some on some station maintenance and things of that nature. But that's where we are in the fire department. And I'm happy where we're at. I like the direction that we're looking at going. And we'll see where we can get to when we get some money and funding and look at other options to make those things happen. So, with that, if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer.
Looking at some of the immediate needs, I agree that the west side would need a location. If I put this station, we talk about the tower, we're talking 10 million plus by the time we done all this. What do we see on the drive?
You're probably looking for a basic 3 base stations, what we're looking to do on the west side, when we need to do that. Right now, and this is bare bones, real reserve, probably 3 or 4 million for a station.
Yeah.
And you have the equipment.
Yep.
So then you're looking at some apparatus. When we look at an engine, another med unit, which the med units now we're looking at probably close to 300,000. And back in 22, we purchased one before the price increase at 230,000. And that's just what we're looking at from a price increase. And hopefully it settles down here in the future. I'm hearing that it's supposed to. I just don't know when. But you're looking at an engine that's probably close to 800,000-900,000. And in 2018, we purchased 2 for 850,000. So that's what we're dealing with.
Any funding sources, any kind of?
FEMA grants, the AFG grant, that's really the big one that's out there to provide that funding. But that even has limitations. We filed for the grant for the tower, and we would have been capped at $1 million. Basically, we still would have to come up with 850,000 to cover the rest of that. So, I've had some discussions with some people on whether some other options that cities can do. Trying to look at those options and see which one's best going forward. I'm not quite sure which one is best right now. I've got 3 or 4 different options that we looked at. We're trying to put X's and O's together and see which way we want to go.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Cool.
Just want to let everybody know the next work session, street department, Tom Professor will be here at that work session, so in case you have any questions for him. Any more questions for me?
You know what, we're doing the $30,000 again to go into the budget stabilization fund.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll bring that to about 540. And then, just as a quick update, this is necessarily budget related, where are we with ARPA spending in the projects?
I do not have those numbers with me, but I can get those numbers. I work with Stephanie, so she kind of, we keep intel, but I can get those numbers for the next work session if you'd like.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, thank you very much. Mr. Bailey, you're back up. At the last work session, we had brought for us to discuss the use of the marketplace tip, the Lincoln Way East. It would be for a light ballast servicing the Starbucks area. I know I had some questions, I wanted to give it an opportunity for more conversation, discussion with 75,000 that they're trying to pull from there. My biggest concern, unless someone else wants to jump in, is when you look at the marketplace infrastructure tip, there's about $925,000 in there right now. So it would be apparent that 75,000 isn't neck breaking, but those dollars are meant to improve the space down by the Walmart marketplace so that we can take care of their capital needs. I know we spread it throughout the city, but with the bridge being right there, the services, I get concerned when we keep dipping into something and we have a multi-million-dollar piece of the puzzle that's not always being addressed. Are we really just backing ourselves into a corner in which one day we have a major issue and no funding available?
I mean, I can't really answer that question. I would say that at this point, we looked at on the alternative with regards to trying to fund this streetlight project with the developer. This was the only, unless we want to take it out of the general fund.
Because the developer already owns the land, is already committed to the building of the Starbucks. This is us just being nice.
Well, you got to also remember that this project is, yes, must be nice, but it's also upgrading a streetlight for us. They're paying the majority of it. If they didn't come, we would have span wire, but now we're upgrading the whole streetlight itself. We don't have to do that, but as an economic development, I'm asking for anything for the project. The two businesses that are going in there, a lot of times, a lot of business asks for some type of incentives. They haven't asked for anything at their location. There's another location going down the street, which is a different business, but that developer hasn't asked for anything at that one either. So, we looked at it as an opportunity to help that specific developer, and at the same time, we're upgrading the streetlight facility at that location.
So they're not asking for it. We offered this up.
They asked us for assistance with regards to this particular project because initially they didn't imagine that the cost of the mast arms and everything. I think they had budgeted about $100,000 for that portion of the project, and it's a little over $200,000.
Ms. Lombardi?
So they're putting in 100,000, we're putting in 75?
The project's a little over $200,000, so they're going to cover $125,000.
This is what I'm struggling to reconcile. I understand completely what you're proposing, Mr. Bailey. We want to be good partners for this new business that's coming in. What I'm trying to wrestle with and is that one, I don't want us to keep going back to the well of the marketplace tip. It generates a lot of revenue that we can use. I get it, and we have used it in the past. I do get concerned that when it has outlots that have not been developed yet, that could be developed, is there a way that this can assist with that? You have a bridge that goes over a highway that serves it, that if anything would ever start to fail on that bridge, what exposure do we have there financially? And then, as you suggested, if we don't use this TIF, we just come out of the general fund, that would seem like a simple fix, except I have an over 100-year-old business in downtown Massillon that has a building problem that we're not assisting.
I don't disagree with any of it. I also don't want to jeopardize that development either. And I'm not sure if this not going forward with these would jeopidize the development or not. And they, I could just let you know that they crunched the numbers and, everything's gotten higher, is the question.
So they have requested assistance, and that this is approximately ballpark of what they were requesting.
They actually wanted a little more.
Mr. Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Which project is this again?
This is the Starbucks Pan Express.
Now, if we do not do this, is that a cost that is completely borne on the developer, or does it just not happen?
That's part of the developer. Unless our ordinance requires that we.
I was going to say, our code is making them do it.
Our code requires them to do it. I guess we look the other way, but I don't think it basically look the other way.
So it's a requirement from the development standpoint. Basically, if we don't pass this, this is just another $75,000 that developer is going to have to pay because it's a requirement.
Somebody's going to eat it.
Mr. Lewis, as you know, I've been leery over the years of spending money from TIFs throughout the city for other parts of the city, and I agree that the marketplace TIF funds are there for a reason, and it concerns me every time we spend from it. And I think I only voted to do it one time because we were assured by the former city engineer that the fund would be replenished due to a reimbursement from, I think, an ODOT grant or something like that. There's going to be a sewer that's going to break down there at some point. There's going to be something that's going to happen, and I'm just leery about spending from these funds if it's not going to be replaced, because in the event of an emergency where TIF funds would cover the improvement, we're going to pull it from the general fund, and it's all going to come back to one place. So, something to think about, but no, I appreciate Mr. Maley you answering the question, because if it's something that the developer has to do, I don't know, it's a tough one, but I'm not 100% convinced I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Councilwoman Kerr?
I know when we were talking about this business coming in, I know there was a lot of concerns from the neighbors in that area when it came to safety and when it came to congestion and traffic. And I know I kept drilling on that piece, and I recalled, this was going to be taken care of by the developer, to ensure that the traffic, the congestion, the neighborhoods, people were able to exit their streets. So now we find ourselves dealing with it, but at that time, it was a conversation that it wasn't for us to address at that time. It was for the developer, unless I misunderstood something. Mr. Maley, did I misunderstand that conversation saying safety and congestion and traffic was like on the developer because there was going to be requirements needed for that business?
Correct. I don't think the developer realized the costs associated with the project. It's kind of went higher than they thought. Also, they can still do the safety issue if you want to keep with the span wire and everything. It's not going to change anything with the safety. The cost of the project that we're discussing here is with the mast arms, the cost of the mast arms and stuff. What really increases the project cost.
And are abatements out of the question because the businesses aren't the same as the developer?
Well, we're tipping the property. I guess here's the other point of this, I guess. We are tipping the property. So if you think about it, eventually we hope that tip is going to pay back what we're giving them now. Because eventually, if we get $10,000 a year out of the business from the south, over the 10-year period, we'll get $100,000 out of the project. It's just going to be down the road. We just don't have the funds in that area now to use use TIF money for it.
And then we've used the same logic in laws to pull money out of their TIF to go service Massillon Marketplace.
That's exactly. In essence, but they are, I mean, in essence, they are going to pay us back. It's just, I mean, if you guys pass the TIF, it eventually it will bring in 75,000, there's no question about that, plus.
Well, they're going to pay us back by us not paying the schools.
Well, I'm just saying.
All right. Yes, Mr. Gregg?
Mr. Miller, did you say that our codes would require them to do the mast arms? So the mast arms are going to happen one way or the other,
That's
That's-
according to our code.
according to code. So they couldn't just say, well, all right, if you're not going to help us, we're just going to stick with the,
Well, if the masts are, if it's strand wired, if they can do that, then they would definitely do that.
but they can't.
They can't.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they're just stuck.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, since that comment I just made, Mr. Lombardi and Mr. Gray, if you guys want to continue this conversation, I'll have to abstain from further conversation or vote on this particular issue. And also it's the TIF issues that were brought before us today.
I have no questions at this point. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
For explanation, I technically work for a district that receives its
That
funds
is
through
money.
private
That's
classes.
exactly right.
All right, you wanted to bring up a couple other things?
Okay. Yeah, I think. First thing I want to.
No, you're at You were down.
Mr. Lewis, Council, we want to bring up to speed what our plan was with regards to our capital project. Time has already come around. It just seems kind of weird that we're just finishing up, I guess, one of the other discussions with Flashpad and money we received over the last two capital projects. Time flies, I guess. But the next capital project needs to be in the works. So we had looked at several different things, and I guess one of the things that we tried to figure out, I don't want to go into some of the projects we looked at, but we're looking to maximize the grant that we can get through the project for the capital bill. So we came up with this, which you have in front of you, which I think is sort of a popular project, we hope, and that's the Reservoir Park Pond, and we're calling it the Reservoir Park Stream Pond and Pump House Restoration Project. We are going to, and these are all just preliminary estimates, but at this point we're probably looking at about 1.6 million for the project. We are going to ask for 1.2 million through the state capital bill for the project. That would include, basically, we're estimating probably about 300,000 for the restoration of the pump house, and then an additional 1.3 million for stream restoration, which is extremely important. At this point, from my understanding, I'm not an expert on this, but I'll let, I guess, Steve or Alex here discuss the stream restoration. And then we're looking at maybe a 40 to 45 acre pond. So we don't have any real definite numbers. These are all kind of ballpark estimates. But we need to get something into our legislators for an ask, and this is the way it usually works. So we prepared some kind a letter to Chris Sherman and Scott Olslicker with regards to what we'd like to have at this point in time with regards to our capital project.
We have to have that letter ready.
They had asked to have something in October, late October to November, late November. I prefer that maybe things roll a little bit farther, but they are asking for the information.
So they want it now.
I prefer that we have something to them, within a week or two, yes. So I know we're putting everything here, trying to do it. But if you have a better idea, please give it to me.
And it's not that I have a better idea, it's just that a lot's going to change in about 6 weeks.
I totally understand it. It's not my schedule. And I had a conversation already, so, if you like, the thing is, if you feel comfortable with this project based on where it is, even at the change of administration in January, you still got to get everything ready. It's a time process, and then you're going to be way behind. And this isn't my timeline. And I prefer that I didn't have to do this.
So you're not asking for our permission, you're just letting us know that we're going forward with it.
I'm letting you know and see if there's any huge concerns with what we're discussing here. If not, we try to move forward. And this is almost like a placeholder, I need to get it out there so we have something in the works.
Well, I can't speak for all the council, but in my opinion, I think it seems like a great concept, but I would want to see the current administration have a conversation with the incoming administration to make sure we're all on the same page and start asking for dollars from Columbus.
Mr. Lewis, if you remember the rule change, we did provide it or require some resolution of support from this council in order to make that ask, which is where we have this conversation, and I appreciate Mr. May bringing this to us now, because these are the exact conversations we need to have prior. Because when we got into it with the splash pad and had to go back and change or things like that, we want to make sure that, I think you're correct, I think a conversation that maybe can be had quickly over the next couple of weeks can meet the timeline if we can, come to terms with what the easiest way to get this off, because I think it is a good idea that we do submit this for funding for this year, but maybe some kinks to work out with some conversation, I agree.
Yeah. And I already had a conversation with the mayor-elect.
Better way to look at you, Jamie.
Yes, David Mann, they called me last week. I fully support this. I think we need to have the reservoir renovated, and I said I would fully support this.
So then, and that's free on the spot. But would you be okay with this council considering a resolution of support for the next council meeting?
Yes.
In the current administration? I feel like
Like I said, we looked at different projects. What you want to do is, because you don't want to ask, you always want to try to do, you got to have some skin in the game on this. So, it's always a crapshoot when you deal with the capital, because you don't know how much money is going to be available. So I hate to say this, but you always try to, go a little high and just try to maximize what your project is. And we felt this was a good project. Obviously, whatever comes in with the grant, we get the capital grant, which must be, we will probably get something as a question, but then we'll have to reevaluate at that point, the dollars. I think this is a partnership between parks and the city as far as some additional costs, but put in, but we can reevaluate that. We did it with the splash pad where we went back twice, put back, got additional funding on the second round. I think the key is just getting something in there and working through the process and working down the road how we can figure out what that total project's going to look like, where the funds are going to come from.
Is the Park and Rec Board aware of this project?
We are meeting with Park and Rec on Wednesday.
That was going to be my question. I really didn't want to go down the path that we went down with the dispatch plan
I don't even,
and delaying things. So yes, if this is on their agenda as to work collaboratively with this project, have input for this project, help, right, that's what I heard they wanted to pursue, but they needed additional assistance with grant writing. So if you could work collaboratively, I think that would be great.
I know I've been speaking with Mr. Pedro, and I know he's made his board aware of the project, and then we're going to discuss it in more detail on Wednesday. It also gives us, because this project, these things don't normally, I don't know when the actual bill will get passed, but it gives us some time to look for additional funding also for the project.
And input on the design, because
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what I have in front of me, who
Yeah.
put this together, but from the splash pad, they wanted input on that initial design right out of the gate. So
And that's
so
fine.
I just want to make
Absolutely.
sure we're all.
Don't look at me.
Any other questions? All right, what was the other thing you had?
Got another share with you. Okay, what you have in front of you are 3 buildings that are outlined in the black magic marker there. Believe it or not, we're going back to the old building demolition and site revitalization program that we really haven't finished yet with Tiger Rags, but the program has been up again for this budget cycle. So we are looking, we've already put in a request to regional planning, the lead agency again. These 3 buildings are out, I don't know if you're familiar with them, on the state hospital property that the city owns, transferred, I guess, quite some time ago. One is the laundry building, the boiler building, and the dietary building. We are looking to try to get all 3 buildings as part of the demolition assistance program. As you know, if you remember our last time we went to the Tiger Rags program, it's basically, in essence, sort of the same program, same amount of money. We wanted to get the request in. I had talked with Mr. Now from Regional Planning, the lead agency director. And so I think ours was one of the first in. I'm not sure how they're doing it this time. He wasn't sure if it was going to be a first come, first served. But I wanted to make sure our stuff was in there first. If that was the case, where we could get 100% funding. Either way, if it's funded, it will be most likely a 75-25 match, 25% coming from the city. These are all city-owned buildings. They've been vacant for quite some time, and they're all in very poor shape. I know if anybody calls, and I've almost hit that building several times, one building, but they are very poor shape. And the cost associated, I've already done a letter, put it in, basically what we did last time, asking for $450,000. We've got 2 estimates, one at 387, and the other at 341 for the demolition for them. We are in the process right now of, tomorrow somebody's going to go out and give us, look at them to get an asbestos survey done on them, so we're going to do the survey, get that started, get that done. And then basically at this point, we build in some additional costs depending on kind of where we're at with the demo for asbestos remediation, not knowing exactly what that cost would be. Once again, timing-wise, the program opened up, I think 2 weeks ago. The applications Like I said, we wanted to get ours in early. Mr. Now told me that at this point, I think they were looking at possibly like March, April. They want to get their applications from Stark County into the state, hopefully sometime in January. So that's once again why we move forward on this project. I think it's a no-brainer project. I mean, these are buildings that we would have to tear down anyway. So I think it makes, we thought it made a lot of sense to move forward and try to get these down while, money was available.
Mr. Hurphy?
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. And Mr. Maley, I heard you say $2 amounts, both around $300,000.
I'm sorry,
What was the total dollar amount of all the demo for all three buildings?
all three buildings, we've got two quotes. I won't mention who they are, but one was for $387, the other was for $341.6.
All right, my mistake. So you've got two quotes that are within the amount of what you're asking.
Yeah, we're asking
Okay.
for $450 because we really didn't know what the remediation would be.
Okay, thanks.